Ever felt stuck at a crossroads, praying for direction, yet heaven feels silent? You're asking God for clarity, but all you hear is confusion, doubt, and 1,000 competing thoughts. What if the problem isn't that God isn't speaking? What if it's that His voice doesn't sound the way you expect? Today, we're uncovering how God actually speaks, not in thunder, not in noise, but in whispers so precise, so personal, they can change everything. By the end of this video, you'll know how to recognize God's guidance, separate it from mental noise, and walk forward with confidence instead of fear. Stay with me, because this might be the clarity you've been praying for. Many people feel lost spiritually, not because they lack faith, but because they don't know how to hear. We've been conditioned to expect dramatic signs, a loud voice, a sudden miracle, a burning bush moment. But most of the time, God doesn't shout, He whispers, and whispers require closeness. If you've ever wondered, God, are you even speaking to me? The answer is yes. The real question is, are you tuned to the right frequency? Because what if you've been hearing God all along and simply mistook His whisper for your own thoughts? Today, we're learning how to cut through the noise, release outdated expectations, and step into a deeper, clearer connection with God, right where you are. God's guidance is rarely dramatic. More often it shows up as a gentle nudge you can't shake, a quiet conviction that brings peace, not pressure, a scripture that suddenly feels written just for you, or advice from someone who speaks truth at the exact right moment. These aren't coincidences, they're confirmations. God speaks through your spirit, His word. Wise counsel, circumstances aligning in unexpected ways. The challenge isn't that God's voice is weak, it's that the world is loud. Notifications, opinions, fear, anxiety, comparison. When everything is shouting, whispers get ignored. But once you learn to recognize God's signature, His peace, His consistency, His truth, those everyday moments turn into moments of undeniable clarity. Here's the question everyone asks: how do I know it's God and not just my own thoughts? This is where most believers get stuck. So let's break it down with 3 powerful filters. 1. The peace test. God's voice brings peace, even when the instruction is challenging. Anxiety rushes, God reassures. If the thought pressures, panics, or condemns, it's not Him. 2. Alignment with Scripture. God will never contradict His word. If the guidance pulls you away from truth, love, humility, or obedience, discard it. God is consistent, always. 3. Wise counsel. God often confirms His whisper through spiritually grounded people, not everyone, but the right ones. If multiple godly voices echo the same truth, pay attention. When guidance passes all 3 filters, peace, Scripture, and confirmation, you can move forward with confidence, not fear. No more second-guessing, no more spiritual paralysis. Hearing God isn't a one-time event, it's a lifestyle. The clearer the relationship, the clearer the voice. Here's how to cultivate that clarity. Intentional quiet. God often speaks in stillness, not because He's absent, but because silence removes interference. Even 5 minutes of intentional quiet can recalibrate your spirit. Reflective journaling. Write what you sense God is saying, without overanalyzing. Patterns will emerge, clarity will grow. Radical gratitude. Gratitude sharpens spiritual sensitivity. When you acknowledge God's faithfulness, you recognize His voice faster. This isn't about rigid rules. It's about building a relationship where hearing God becomes natural, not forced. Hearing God is powerful, but obedience is where transformation happens. Sometimes God's whisper will challenge logic. Sometimes it will ask for courage. Sometimes it will require trust before understanding, but every step taken in obedience leads to alignment. God's will isn't a tightrope, it's a path, and clarity doesn't always come before movement. Sometimes it comes because you moved. When you act on God's whisper, confidence grows, fear loses its grip, purpose becomes tangible. You stop asking, "Am I where I'm supposed to be?" Because deep down, you know. If you've been waiting for God to shout, listen closer. He's whispering, and His whisper carries more power than any noise around you. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to reflect. What has God been nudging you toward lately? Drop a comment, like this video, and share it with someone who needs clarity today. Because when you learn to hear God clearly, everything changes.